Hello, I'm going to do the second part today in my recording of the book by Bear Grylls, Mission Survive. Been looking forward to this. Fortunately, I don't have the book with me, so I'm going to be reading it on an ebook today. But I'm looking forward to sharing the next part with you. So if I can get my screen set up, here it is. Anakat. Their destination lay on Alaska's west coast, looking out over the Bering Sea. I've stopped over there a couple of times, the pilot continued. You know, the elders there have an oral tradition that goes back centuries. They can recite their entire history at the drop of a hat, and they know this land inside out and back to front. Well, I can't wait to meet them, Uncle Al agreed. He twisted round in his seat to wink at Beck. Beck smiled back. They both knew this wasn't just a pleasure trip. Uncle Al didn't really make pleasure trips. All his travels had a point to them. To the rest of the world, he was Professor Sir Alan Granger, anthropologist and TV personality with a keen interest in environmental matters. When they were alive, Beck's parents had taken them all over the world in their travels on behalf of Green Force, the Environmental Direct Action Group. Now, Al was determined to carry on the good work of his younger brother, Beck's dad. With all due respect to the national curriculum, he had once said to Beck, "You'll learn a lot more this way." That, as Beck recalled, had been as they flew over the Australian outback to live with a community of Aboriginals. He gazed back at the landscape outside. It looked very different to the baked desert of Western Australia, but in some ways it was very similar. This too was a world where Mother Nature ruled. Her word was law. An unprepared human would be swallowed up and never seen again. But it looked beautiful, and it was harsh and hostile. But a prepared human being, that was very different. A prepared human being could live in harmony with nature down there and never want for anything. The Inuit, well, the people who lived up here in the northern latitudes, spread from Alaska to Greenland, and they have been managing it for thousands of years. The Inuit. That was why things like the oral tradition and culture of Anakat were so important. You could never learn it through books or off the web. You had to live it. You had to breathe it. Beck and Uncle Al had flown from London to Seattle in a brand new wide-bodied airliner. Seattle-Tacoma International Airport was like a small space-age city, sparkling and modern. They then had caught a plane to Anchorage, smaller, more crowded, and finally they'd been picked up by the Cessna for the 4-hour flight out here across a landscape that hadn't changed in thousands of years. With each stage of the journey, Beck had felt he was shedding something he didn't need, one more layer of that 21st century. Someone tugged at his elbow. Beck turned away from the window to look at the plane's third passenger. The 21st century's greatest fan, Tikani, was in the back seat next to Beck's. Like Beck, he was 13 years old too, but his accent was pure American. One look at his features and his sleek, dark hair told you where his ancestry lay. He belonged to the Anak, one of the Inuit peoples native to this area. In fact, Takani's father was the headman of Anakat. He was a forward-thinking man and had decided the village's isolation couldn't last. Someone had to go out and learn the ways of the modern world, so Takani had been bundled off to school in Anchorage. When Beck and Uncle Al stopped off there, Al's contacts in Anakat called and asked if they could pick up the boy for the last leg of the journey. Rather than use the intercom, Takani just leaned close to Beck. He pulled back the earphones and shouted, "What are you looking at?" Beck replied the same way, putting his head close to Takani's. "This landscape," he called. "It's amazing." "Uh-huh." Takani craned his neck to look out of Beck's window, but there was only polite interest on his face. He was just trying to be friendly. There wasn't anything down there he hadn't seen almost every day of his life. "Writer." He waved the thin plastic sliver of Bex's iPod, which he'd borrowed back in Anchorage. "Now, how do you make this iPod shuffle?" Beck fought the temptation to roll his eyes. He took the iPod gently out of Takani's hand and showed him how to scroll through the options on the screen. Thanks, man. Takani sat back in his seat again. The iPod's thin wires disappeared inside the padding of his earphones, and Beck smiled to himself and shook his head. Takani's father's plan to help his son learn the ways of the modern world had been a little too successful. For all Takani's heritage, excuse me, for all Takani's heritage, Beck suspected he would gladly drop the oral tradition and culture of Anakat down a deep, dark hole and leave them there. Perhaps he'd get the chance, because his world was about to change in a way that even Takani's father had never dreamed of. Right, and that's the end of chapter 2. Had a few ideas at the end of that, which you could have a go at if you wanted to. First of all, it talks about in the chapter the Inuit people. I wondered who could have a go at finding out some more about those guys. We haven't learned a lot about them in school so far, and I'd be really interested to see what you could find out about the Inuits. Another thing was I thought was really cool at the start of the story. That's all about a couple of people having a conversation in a plane, potentially quite a simple thing. And through the conversation, we learn lots about the characters and we learn lots about the background of the story. I wonder if anybody can write a story that starts off with a conversation between two characters like that. That by the end of it, we've learned lots about the characters. And we've had a few hints about things that might go well or not well in the story. That story definitely has me wondering so far what's going to happen on this plane journey to change all of their lives. And also, we had another cliffhanger ending there, didn't we? I know in the first chapter, a bit of a cliffhanger. Certainly in the second chapter as well, it finishes by saying it would change his world in a way that Takani's father had never dreamed of. Thought that was pretty exciting. Anyway, chapter 3 coming really soon. Looking forward to reading it to you. And yeah, I hope you tune in for the next one. Thanks, everyone. Let me know or send any bits of learning you do about the Inuit people into Clapford Home Learning at gmail.com. Love to hear more about them.